ultimately, we're nearly a year into this project now. I don't see any signs of improvement. He keeps picking the wrong team. He still hasn't won back-to-back victories. This is a manager who is clearly out of his depth.
Performances for a club of Manchester United's size has not been good enough for a long, long time. There's no fear of going to Old Trafford now. There has to be a change at some point. The players, you can't go and change 25 players. The manager eventually will have to change.
But the message coming out of Old Trafford is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe continues to back this manager. If he was in charge of any other football club, he wouldn't be there anymore.
So should they fire him? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. There's not a stellar list of candidates, but that for me isn't a reason to keep an underperforming manager in a job.
Even though the problems that they have at Manchester United, any manager in the world would snap their hand off to be Manchester United manager because it's still one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Hello, it's Premier League All Access with the Crookmeister and I together in the same place today, which is nice. And we welcome Charlie Adam, former set-piece coach at Everton, a Liverpool midfielder, current Burnley under-21 coach, and the man who once scored for Stoke City against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge from the halfway line. And no, I haven't forgiven him yet for doing that. Hi, Charlie, you all right?
Good morning, everybody okay?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. What a weekend in the Premier League, by the way. Arsenal closing the gap. Palace go 18 unbeaten. They're the only unbeaten side in the Premier League. And just one or two bits of refereeing controversy.
Yeah, if only one of us had a refereeing podcast.
No, I think it's good that we get a bit of action, and people talk about sometimes it's been a drab at times with the Premier League, but this weekend it's opened right up, hasn't it, with the decisions and also incidents in the Arsenal game with two players. But no, I think it's starting to hot up in the Premier League, and Liverpool losing I think is a big story, but there's a lot more to the Premier League than just that story.
Liverpool losing and Arsenal winning, is that a good thing for the overall Premier League season?
Well, I think absolutely. After the first 5 games, that we all thought that Liverpool could run away with it, but performances have probably not been to the level that Liverpool expect or were looking for. They were a lot of late goals, but again, they went to a tough place in Crystal Palace at the weekend, and if you look at Crystal Palace as a football club, how they've went on that run, getting European football, but also winning the FA Cup, to probably losing one of the best players in Mark Guéhi in the summer, and that not happening, losing Eze, to then react still to the quality and the level that they have is incredible. And that's down to good team spirit, but also a very good manager in Oliver Glasner.
Absolutely. Just to tease you of what's coming up, we will be talking about Liverpool, Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Arsenal is where we stop first of all. We'll do a bit of Chelsea, Brighton, and of course Brentford, Manchester United. And just so you know what to expect further down the podcast, here's one sentence from the Saltmeister on Manchester United's performance at the weekend.
I don't need a sentence. I'll just give you one word or 2 words. Utter shambles.
Okay, well, you can imagine what's coming next, so make sure you stick around. Let's get into it. Only one place to start. Arsenal closed the gap on the leaders to 2 points. Newcastle 1, Arsenal 2. Crook and I were there. It was a brilliant game. It had absolutely everything, didn't it? Cracking atmosphere, questionable refereeing calls, and a couple of really late goals. Crook was telling me how he tipped up the draw and he was the best predictor of football matches in the land. And then Gabriel stole in with another set piece. Now, listen, Charlie, let's talk about this from the start, right? Because you were a big part of Everton's success from set pieces last season. Arne Slot said after the game on Saturday, Crystal Palace against Liverpool, and having watched Brentford and Manchester United, that this league is becoming the set-piece league. I mean, this was a set-piece game. Is he right, though? Is it becoming a set-piece league?
No, I don't think it's becoming a set-piece league. I think what you are seeing is there's a lot of teams doing a lot of good work with their teams and with the groups, and ultimately they're bringing in their own specialist people to organise that and keep that, because there's so much going on in terms of, it's not just managing the team as a manager. You need extra coaches to help you in terms of set play. You look at in possession, out of possession. Then you've got the players to look after. You've got probably a bunch of staff. It depends on what club you're at. Could have 20 staff. You might have 30 staff. So a lot of people have getting that designated jobs. But Arsenal have been so successful over the last few years with set plays, and Mikel has basically probably turned the set plays back into his favour in terms of, Arsene Wenger used to moan about Tony Pulis about the set plays, but Arsenal's used that to their advantage for a long, long time now in the last, with Mikel bringing in his own person, and it's been very successful for them. And that's part of the game. It's as a team defending it is very hard because they have so many good players in terms of delivery, but also as well the ones that they have attacking it. It's hard when you don't have as many to block or to get up against them because they're so strong. And one thing about Gabriel is that when he wants to go and win it, he's got a hell of a leap. And you've seen that with the quality of the goal that he scored yesterday.
Yeah, certainly. Did Nicolas Jover earn his mural last night? Because he was the first one to celebrate when Gabriel's goal went in right at the very end. They were the better side, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. I mean, actually, sometimes it's easy to get swept up in emotion. We were there, as you say, it was a brilliant occasion for the neutral. It was just great fun, a good old-fashioned ding-dong. The crowd were up. And when Arsenal scored so late, I think Mickey Gray said on air, well, they don't deserve to win this game. I think when you watch it back, and we did last night, they were the team who created all the chances. Apart from the Voltemada goal, Newcastle didn't really lay a glove on Arsenal defensively. I still think it's a massive issue for Eddie Howe. How do you replace the goals from Alexander Isak from last season? Voltemada was running on empty in the second half before he was taken off. Obviously, still no Johan Wissa to call upon. But Arsenal had so many opportunities. It would have been, I think, an injustice had they not have won the game.
You wouldn't expect them to create too many chances against Arsenal, though, would you?
No, but they haven't created too many chances over the course of the season so far. That is the concern. I think the last 3 away games have ended in goalless draws. And actually, speaking to the great Mickey Quinn before the game, he was saying that Voltemada is a lot of things, but he doesn't see him necessarily as someone who's going to score 20 goals a season.
Well, of course, they have no Johan Wissa at the moment, Charlie, have they? But do you think they create enough chances?
No, at the moment, I don't think they are. And I watched Voltemar in the summer for Germany under 21s, and he stands out because of his height and his size. But technically, he's a very good player. And I look at him and I think this could be a Peter Crouch sort of situation here. But I don't think he's a number 9. I think he's more of like a number 10, sort of could play off somebody. But again, for them to have Vissa, Isak is obviously losing him is key. It is massive. And to replace that, we've seen it with a number of clubs over the years that, when you lose somebody like that, it's very difficult to replace. So they have to try and get some sort of goal scoring form. The big man scored a great goal yesterday. I thought it was a wonderful header. But Newcastle are going to find it tough this year with losing Isak and without Vissa as well at the moment.
He looks great as well, doesn't he? I just love the tash and the hair. I just like the whole look. It works for me. Does the mental strength and the character that Arsenal showed, Crook, to get themselves not only back into the game, but to win the game yesterday, sort of underscore that actually they could be champions this year? They could push Liverpool all the way.
Yeah, particularly as Liverpool are not firing on all cylinders. And I think at the moment, Arne Slot is still trying to find the right blend in terms of his new signings. We'll come on to that. But I think what you can't question Arsenal these days is that they have leaders, all over the pitch. Gabriel has come up with a goal. Marino with the equaliser coming off the bench to score against his old team was a massive personality. Declan Rice was a driving force. Bukayo Saka is a leader in his own way. David Raya as well. They've got people like Calafiori who are not afraid to do the ugly stuff and maybe was a bit fortunate to escape a second yellow card before being subbed off, actually. But they certainly have the character to turn games around. And it's no coincidence, is it? 2 weeks in a row that they've stolen a point against Manchester City. They've stolen all 3 points against Newcastle. I'm sure that Mikel Arteta would rather they be winning games more comfortably. But those are 2 difficult games to come through. And actually, to come from behind and take 4 points could be absolutely massive come the end of the season.
Alex and Sam, do you think, like, obviously Mikel's, I see a lot of people saying that they want to change and sometimes at Arsenal and they're not happy with this and that, but these players have been there for a couple of years now. So to say, their mentality monster, where does that all of a sudden come from? I think it's been there. It just, Liverpool was so good last year for a long period of time. They dropped so many points that they didn't want to. But I think that this Arsenal team they've been going in the right direction. You need a lot of luck and you need players to perform for a long part of the season at consistent basis. But again, when you lose your Gabriels and you lose Saka for a big period of last year, it's going to affect you, isn't it? And again, at the moment, they've got everybody fit. They've got a strong squad. They've got that number 9 they've been craving for a few years now. Hopefully, the Gyökeres could score a few goals for them. But if you ask Mikel to go to Newcastle and get 3 points, it's as tough a way ground as it'll be, and that atmosphere is incredible. Eddie does a brilliant job, and Mikel will be delighted to get out there with the 3 points. So I think this Arsenal team are going the right direction, and it takes time, but we're early into the season, and going to a place like that and getting a win late on will give them a lot of confidence.
Absolutely. And although Crook was trying to convince me over the weekend that Manchester United had the hardest start to the season in terms of fixtures, the fact that Arsenal played Manchester United, Liverpool, City, and Newcastle United already this season, I think bodes well for them going forward. And actually, you mentioned there that they didn't get much luck last season. And one celebrity Arsenal fan texted me yesterday during the middle of the game when they were struggling a little bit, and after the Gyökeres incident, that maybe they didn't get much luck in that game either. It felt as if the luck was going against them, because Gyökeres did look as if he deserved a penalty in that first half when he snaffled up a poor back pass from Murphy, went to round the goalkeeper and went down. The referee called penalty, the VAR overturned it. It's quite a controversial decision, which certainly divided opinion, especially amongst the Arsenal Twitterati. Men in Black is a podcast that we do here on talkSPORT with former Premier League referee Chris Foy, and he has his say on all the big major incidents. And I must admit, when I sat down to do the podcast with him this morning, I thought that he was going to justify exactly why this penalty was overturned. However, he went completely the other way. This is what he said. For years, we've been told, I got the ball is no longer a defence in law. Why is it here?
The bits that can be confusing sometimes is when you get a touch on the ball. That doesn't negate the fact that there's a foul. But with the one at Newcastle yesterday, there was a slight toe on the ball from Nick Pope. We don't want to be forensically examining these decisions, and there is a slight touch on the ball, but that doesn't negate the fact that Pope has come out a little bit recklessly and collided with Gyökeres. I mean, I think it's a penalty, and I think it should have been check complete, and the decision should have stood. That there was the original decision on field made by the referee.
So Chris says that actually we overanalyzed this decision. It was too forensic, and actually he thinks that his on-field call, if he was refereeing, would have been a penalty, and that should have stood. Was that your initial view, Charlie Adam?
Yeah, I thought it was a penalty in real time as well, and I'm surprised that the VAR's gone against the referee, which is not regular. And at the time, I thought it was a Stonewall penalty for Arsenal, and Gyökeres was unlucky not to get it.
Yeah, it's almost like the VAR there tried to re-referee the game, which is not what we want and not what VAR is for. We also had a bit of a discussion about the Gabriel handball. I'm convinced that should have been a penalty for Newcastle late in the game when Gabriel had his hands up. And Chris actually gives us his reasons as to why that isn't the case. The Premier League All Access feed is the place to find the Men in Black podcast if you want to go back and listen to it, because there's quite a few incidents to get into this weekend. Handball for you, Crookie?
Yeah, I think for the reasons that you said when we were at the game, that because his arm is up above his head. At first, I thought it was too close proximity. Obviously, the actual argument that PGMOL have given that it wasn't awarded is because it flicked off his shin first. But I think when you put your arm above your head, you make your body bigger, you are running a massive risk.
And we had another big discussion about how it's very different in England to the way that handball is assessed elsewhere. Charlie, you'll know, watching loads of European games and international games, that there is a much more prescriptive administration of the handball law on the continent. And there's no way in this earth that Gabriel gets away with that in a Champions League game.
No, absolutely not. And that's, again, it's the players are getting different vibes or different feelings from the referees coming into the training ground to speak to them at the start of the season, and then at the moment I don't know if a UEFA referee will come in and speak to them on Champions League or Europa League games or something, because the rules seem to be a little bit different, or in terms of the high standard of handball in Europe is totally different. And it's hard to go, but I thought it was a penalty as well. And I don't know if we're going to talk about it as well, but the Gabriel situation with Voltamar as well, just shoving him in the
Oh,
face.
yeah. What did you think about that? Because apparently that's not violent conduct. Is that a little bit too much for you? Is that just part of the game? Would you give someone a little dig like that if they'd wound you up?
I think it's a red card. I think it's off the ball. There's no intent from Gabriel to even. I understand there's a lot of blocking, and Raya goes to kick the ball, but there's intent to actually force his arm towards his face. So there's a level and a line that you can go across. Of course, there's blocking. You see it all the time when the ball gets rolled back and people block. But to actually put your hand up into his face, I think there's definitely a violent conduct situation there.
Quick word on Newcastle United. 6 points from their opening 6 games, only 4 goals scored. Is there a concern about how the season's going to pan out? Or do you have to be a little bit patient with them, bearing in mind the new players that they've brought in?
No, I think you've got to be a bit patient, not just the new players brought in, but obviously their summer preparation was dominated by the Alexander Isak saga. I still maintain that the owners should have made the decision to sell him a lot earlier than they did, and it would have been maybe a smoother summer for Newcastle to navigate. Obviously, they've got players to come back from injury, Jacob Ramsey and Johan Wissa, 2 of their summer signings. I still think defensively that they're very strong. I really like the look of Malik Chow in that game yesterday. So I think they'll be fine. But obviously there is a difficult balancing act with Champions League football and what they want to do in the Premier League as well. Do I think they'll finish in the top 4 or 5? No, I don't, to be honest.
You don't look particularly relaxed today. You look a little bit sort of grumpy. And
I think he's desperate to get on that train, isn't he?
Yeah, are you okay?
Good.
Because last night when you were sitting in here and we were watching the games, I gave you a little whiskey and you were much.
Well, maybe I just need a little whiskey.
Yeah, is it that, or is it because Mrs. Crook is an Arsenal fan and Arsenal won, and you're upset that she's going to keep?
She didn't even watch the game. She was at kid's birthday party. What kind of support is that?
Yeah. Okay. We'll get on to Manchester United in just a second, and Crook wishes he didn't watch that one. Crystal Palace 2, Liverpool 1. Crystal Palace gave Liverpool a bit of a taste of their own medicine here, Charlie, didn't they? They extended their unbeaten run to 18 games. They haven't lost since the 16th of April. How good a job has Oliver Glasner done, bearing in mind all of the upheaval in the summer?
He's done a magnificent job. I think even with the players that he had last year, with the quality he had with Eze, you've got to remember, people like Elise has left the football club in the last couple of years as well. Big money. Eze's the next one that went, and to then on the last day of the window, hours to go, think that you're going to lose your captain. It must have been really tough for Oliver Glasner, but to keep the team and the club focused, it's not been an easy summer, is it? In terms of John Textor with the problems that they've had off the pitch in terms of, 2 club ownership and don't know where they were going to be. But, to end up in the Conference League just to get on, to take their medicine, get on with it, to win games and keep a group of players together that are motivated has been an unbelievable job from Oliver Glasner. And they're reaping the rewards with performances. And it's not an easy place to go, Crystal Palace. And no matter what form they're in, good form, bad form, Selhurst Park is not a great place to go and play, and they make it hard for you. And it's a brilliant result for them, and like I say, it keeps the run going.
Crook, does he become a live contender for any big job? I don't know what one might come up next. That comes up in the Premier League now because of his performance with Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I think he has to win the FA Cup, to be flying high in the Premier League, to be so long unbeaten, as Charlie says, with all the off-field issues. And actually just the way he conducts himself, because I spoke to him after the game and one of my questions was, what is the ceiling for Crystal Palace? And he said, well, I don't know really, because this time last year we hadn't won a game. People were basically asking if I was going to get fired. So I'm going to stay humble and we'll just enjoy the moment. But he has that authority, that confidence in his ability that at the moment some managers at bigger clubs in the Premier League are not necessarily putting across. So I think he would be a contender for Manchester United, if that's what you're asking me, not least because the system that Ruben Amorim has built the squad for is the one that is serving Palace so well. But they're just a terrific unit. Mark Gay, against the club that he wanted to sign in the summer, played a part in both their goals, actually, and defended really well as well. Chris Richards impressed me. Obviously, he stands out with that massive hair that he's got. You've got Kamada and Wharton was the midfield too, and they dominated that area of the pitch. Ismaila Sarr, who's caused Liverpool problems in the past, was absolutely terrific as well. And Mateta was a real handful. And they've got a top goalkeeper in Dean Henderson. So I think, listen, they're not going to win the league. They're probably not going to finish in the top 4. But I think if they can keep their key players fit, I wouldn't rule out a European challenge for Palace.
Charlie, interestingly though, because of the fact that he's done so well, we do then talk about him for the next step, right? Which is probably a little bit disrespectful to Crystal Palace. But is that just the natural order of things? Or is it another example that if you're at a club like Crystal Palace, there is a level which everybody else will not let you go above?
Yeah, I think you're right. Is that let's don't be disrespectful to Crystal Palace. I think they're a wonderful football club and that they're at a level, but there's a ceiling for them in terms of what they can bring in terms of players they can sign and how much they can sign a player for, salary as well. They're a good club in the Premier League. Had their tough times, and obviously my former manager getting them promoted in Holloway. So. No, they're a brilliant football club, but how far can you take them? And again, when you're doing a wonderful job, and we talk about shapes and formations, he's playing the same shape and the formation as Ruben Amorim, and he's getting the better out of these players than what Amorim's getting. And so, every week I hear, well, the shape you can't play that formation in the Premier League. Well, you can because it's worked for Crystal Palace. Ultimately, it's the players within that formation that's not bringing what they expect. So again, good leadership, good organisation, and good man management as well is key to that. So I think he's done a brilliant job. Of course, he's going to be linked with every job. He's had good jobs on abroad, and let's say for him to keep doing the job, he's not signed a new contract as well, which is something they have to be wary of. So no, I think he'll be linked with most of the Premier League clubs if they come around.
Lots of late goals for Liverpool in the early part of the season. They got another one here, actually, which they thought would have got them a point before that late Eddie Nketiah moment, which is great for him. And hopefully it's a launch pad for him to have a little bit more success because he's had a difficult time with injury and he's struggled to get into that team. But do you judge Liverpool's season differently now, Crook, when you look back over the course of the campaign and I suppose, have to accept that they haven't been playing particularly well, but they've got over the line? That run had to come to an end at some point, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And I think the concern that Arne Slot has, and he spoke to me about this after the game, is the lack of clean sheets. Even when they were winning games, they were having to do it the hard way because they're not as defensively resolute as they were last season. Who'd have thought they'd lose Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I think we all agreed wasn't necessarily the best defender, but offered a lot going forward, and they'd look more vulnerable defensively. I think he's still trying to shoehorn certain players into the team. It was a strange substitution, actually, that he made at half-time. He moved Dominic Szoboszlai to right back, even though Frimpong was on the bench, and that was in order to get more attacking players onto the field. But it really didn't work because Palace continued to dominate, and it would have been an injustice had Federico Chiesa's goal rescued a point, because the Slot himself said they could have been 4 or 5 down at half-time. I think Florian Wirtz is still struggling at the moment to really impose himself on the Premier League, and Isak is a long way from being match fit. And you can understand now, watching that game, why Slot was so frustrated with that red card, that brainless sending off for Hugo Ekitike, because he would have almost certainly started this game, and it may well have been a different outcome.
Charlie, is Arne Slot struggling to find the right role for Florian Wirtz? And will it take time? How much time will it take him to settle into the physicality of the Premier League?
Yeah, I do think that it takes time for these new players to come into the Premier League. Some of the form players coming in, they hit the ground running. Absolutely they do. But some take time, and for Wirtz living in a different country, different style, different surroundings for him, going home to just him and his girlfriend, where he might be going home to him and his friends or family around them. It's a different life for them, and it does take time. Ultimately, we don't give him time because of the expectation and the pressure of the transfer fee is so high that we expect them just to come in.
Do clubs feel like that, though? If you spend the amount of money that they spent on Florian Wirtz, do clubs actually think, hold on a second, we've spent this much money, we expect you to be ready-made to come in and make an impact straight away? Or do they have a little bit more patience?
No, I think you've got to have the patience. I think players and managers, we understand coming into a different league and different surroundings, because we're so high profile in the Premier League. He's playing for, let's say, one of the biggest clubs in the world, that every situation, every pass he makes is scrutinised. And yeah, he's not hit the heights that we expected straight away. And over the season, he'll grow into it. He'll get confident in terms of the players he's playing with, and that's the rhythm they're trying to get. If you look at when Slot came in last season, he inherited a brilliant squad that knew a way of playing. He tweaked a little bit. They brought one player in, but now they've had an overhaul of players, and the dressing room's different, and scenarios they've had over the summer. It's been a tough start to them, but they're still top of the league. They're still top of the league. They'd won 5 out of 5. Okay, not in conventional way that they want to, but they still won 5 out of 6 games now. And yeah, the gap's closed a little bit, but I'd rather be there than where the other clubs are that are struggling and can get a win. So they're still in a good place. It'll take time, but you get scrutinised for every moment and every result. And this is a good Liverpool team, and I think they've done a lot of good business.
There's a lot of emphasis on the new players and the fact they're struggling to fit in, but we have to talk about Mo Salah as well, who was largely anonymous once again at Selhurst Park. Actually, I don't know if you touched on this with Chris Foy, apart from, to me, flicking the ball with his hand and helping them equalise, and I think that probably should have been ruled out.
No conclusive evidence.
Oh, it looked pretty conclusive from where I was.
But even in the derby, he was quiet, Sam, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it is concerning, isn't it? It similarly dates back to actually the latter part of last season as well, where we didn't have a particularly good end to the campaign.
No, but again, he'll get his 20 goals, and again, it's just like you say, people finding their feet. They've had a settled squad for a couple of years, and new players, new ideas. Of course, Ekitike's come in and scored a few goals, and
is it different for Salah? Is it a different role for him? Has he got to adjust to having like Frimpong or Bradley playing in a different sort of zone, so he has to move differently? Does that make a difference to his rhythm?
No, probably not, because he's Mo Salah and he's still one of the best players in the world. I think Arne Slot gives him less responsibility back the pitch because they want to keep him as high as they can, and he becomes a threat on the counters. I just think it's about movements and, like you say, playing with a Frimpong who's very quick and direct, and playing the other way is different to playing with Bradley. He understands what Trent can do, that Trent won't really go on the outside of him, but Frimpong wants to go on the outside a lot. Bradley wants to come and play on the inside. So yeah, a lot of different things. But again, playing with that partnership is of putting crosses in for Ekitike. He wants balls in the box. His heading rate is unbelievable. He's very good in the air. So there's a lot of different things going on, and just not feeling the rhythm at the moment. But again, once this Liverpool team get up and running, they'll be fine.
That's it for the title race. Let's go down to the bottom of the table now. Ruben Amorim's wait for back-to-back wins lingers on. Brentford beat Manchester United by 3-1 on Saturday lunchtime. Whatever momentum Manchester United had post the Chelsea game evaporated pretty quickly with that defeat at Brentford. Crookmeister, I was there for this game, and actually what freaked me out about the whole thing is that afterwards Ruben Amorim said to me that they'd got sucked in to Brentford's way of playing the game. They kicked off the game, Manchester United, by sending the ball back to the goalkeeper, lining all of the outfield players up on the halfway line, and then charging forward to the Brentford penalty area so Altai could kick the ball long. Far from Brentford sucking them into their game, Manchester United decided to play it from the start.
Well, I don't know what Manchester United's game is at this moment in time, Sam, to be honest. And one of the other things that Ruben Amorim, I think, said to you was when we win, it's not the system. And when we lose, it's the system's fault. Well, we don't know because we don't win enough games if you're a Manchester United fan. Every time you think a corner has been turned, there's another slap in the face waiting for you. I mean, the first 2 goals they conceded were an absolute joke, to be honest. From Cunha trying to buy a foul on the edge of the penalty area. I don't know what Harry Maguire was doing, trying to deal with that long punt upfield. The second was a shambles as well. Then they get back into the game. Then they get a penalty, and it should have been a red card for Nathan Collins, by the way. I'm sure Chris Foy on your podcast would agree with that. And then Bruno Fernandes misses the penalty the second time this season when he's had the opportunity to get his team some points on the board. But ultimately, we're nearly a year into this project now. I don't see any signs of improvement. He keeps picking the wrong team. Casemiro suspended. You think, right, this is the opportunity for Kobbie Mainoo to come into midfield, where United have struggled for legs. Instead, he plays Ugarte, who doesn't have the legs to play in the Premier League in this system. Lenny Yora, I think, has been one of the brightest sparks defensively over the course of the season. He's out the team. Harry Maguire comes in. Mason Mount comes on at left wing back because he's so wedded to this system. And I can't believe that there isn't more scrutiny from the Manchester United hierarchy. We reported on Sunday that there have been tentative talks with other candidates, including Gareth Southgate. But the message coming out of Old Trafford is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe continues to back this manager. If he was in charge of any other football club, he wouldn't be there anymore. He's been there nearly a year. They've had 33 games in the Premier League. He's taken 34 points. He still hasn't won back-to-back victories. Gary Neville has come out and said he's concerned. Wayne Rooney has come out and said the soul has been ripped out of the football club. This is a manager who is clearly out of his depth.
And breathe. I was looking around for a blanket there. Charlie had almost fallen asleep. That was like asking Marco Silva about the officiating. Crookie barely took a breath in his rant. So should they fire him? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Who would you replace him with?
Well, that's the question.
So you don't know who you'd bring in?
Probably Glasner. And I appreciate it's a huge step up. And who knows, maybe he wouldn't even want to leave Crystal Palace. There's not a stellar list of candidates, but that for me isn't a reason to keep an underperforming manager in a job.
Charlie, is it fair to sack a manager like Ruben Amorim, who came in midway through a season, has only had 6 games of a full season, which he's expected to take charge of, even if you don't see a discernible improvement? Because of Manchester United's problems behind the scenes and with recruitment over a long period of time, would it be a rush to judgment to remove him from his position, or is it the right thing to do?
It's hard because, I've been there and I'm a manager. I want to be a manager myself. So to pull the trigger on another manager is very difficult. But performances for a club of Manchester United's size has not been good enough for a long, long time. And we could keep diverging back to, your Ten Hags and Van Gaal, David Moyes, right from the start when Sir Alex left. The football club has been, not to a place or a level of expectation of where it's been. So, Alex, the big Manchester United fan, knows more than me. It doesn't feel like it's a place to go that you want to. There's no fear of going to Old Trafford now. I talk about it still as one of the biggest club in the world, alongside Liverpool, your Real Madrid's. It's got that there. It's got the fan base, but the trust is not there from the supporters to the owner, and the owner has to look at it. And if I'm Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's a very wealthy guy, very successful in his businesses, and it's failing the way it's failing at the moment, then like Alex says, there has to be a change at some point. The players, you can't go and change 25 players. The manager eventually will have to change, and I'm disappointed in terms of the way it's gone, because he was a bright manager and done a brilliant job at Sporting, but this is a different animal to Sporting Lisbon, this Manchester United club. This is, one of the biggest clubs in the world. The supporters are not happy, and the players don't look happy in terms of what they're doing. But again, the players have to take responsibility. I understand it falls on the manager's head, but I don't think these players are playing to the level. But the manager's not helping himself by not playing certain players in certain positions or in the right positions at the right times. For me, Kobbie Mainoo was a young talent 2 years ago. I'd seen him 3-4 years ago playing for Manchester United under 18s, 19s, and he was the best player. He come into it, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what's happened between him and Amorim. You want to keep your best talents. You have to keep your best players. Manchester United are used to bringing young players through. And after his performances and what he did, played for England, they should have got him on a new contract. They should have gave him the opportunity to live and be Manchester United for a long, long time, for the next 10 years. This is what we're going to do. We're going to build a football club. We're going to build a team round Kobbie Mainoo. And you've seen it with Rashford having to leave the football club because of the strains and the stresses of being a young player coming through. It's not been the performances you expect from Rashford and that, but he needs support, he needs help. At the moment, Kobbie Mainoo, he's I don't know what he's done, but it's not working, and he needs to be in this team to give it a bit of life and a bit of energy. Again, Lenny Yoro as well, is still a young player, but he's a terrific young centre-back is learning the game. He's 19 years of age. I think he's got all the attributes to be a top defender. But again, when you're playing with players that are not playing with confidence, it doesn't help the younger players around them. So I believe that they have to try and make changes. And again, it'll fall down to the manager, because he's the focus of the football club, and eventually they'll make a change. But for me, we're saying, well, I'm not sure who's Manchester United. Anybody in this world would snap their hand off right now, even though the problems that they have at Manchester United. Any manager in the world would snap their hand off to be Manchester United manager because it's still one of the biggest clubs in the world.
It is, but this has been going on for such a long time. I think some people will say, is it fair to blame just the manager here? Yeah, look, he's got 34 points, 33 points in 34 games. It's a terrible, terrible record. But there are greater things. There are greater things at play here rather than just the manager and his tactics, aren't there? I mean, clearly there are, because otherwise Ten Hag wouldn't have been sacked, Mourinho wouldn't have been sacked, Solskjaer wouldn't have been sacked, Van Nistelrooy would have probably been kept on, or Moyes would have been sacked, Louis van Gaal would have been sacked. There's clearly a huge body of underinvestment or bad recruitment or bad organisation or something that's going on this football.
By the way,
we know all of that.
There's been big investment. There's been big investment, but not the right investment. There's been big investment, not right in the right investment. Two different scenarios,
And they've changed the sporting structure now. The complaint used to be, well, there's no director of football. There's no real direction from the owners because they're hands off. Obviously, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is trying to be more hands on than the Glazers. They've got a new training ground. They're talking about a new stadium, which I think is the least of the issue at this moment in time. But they spent over £200 million on new players in the summer, presumably players that Ruben Amorim had handpicked to play in this system. They still haven't got.
Well, presumably, do you not know whether that's the case or not? Because there is a new recruitment structure in place.
Of course, it's the case. He would have approved Cunha and Mbumo, but there's no number 6. They're short of centre backs. The left wing back they signed to play his system is absolutely atrocious.
But they can't do that all in one transfer.
No, they can't.
They wanted to bring in goals. They bought in these 3 players.
And
none of them don't score any goals.
Well, yeah, exactly. So.
They can't bring in another centre-half, another a midfield player, another goal. They can't do everything all in one transfer window, Charlie. It's impossible, isn't it?
But but you want to see progress, and surely the owners want to see progress.
But for these 3 players coming in, again for them, it's a huge step up. Keep talking about step up size and the pressures. Playing for Brentford to go to Manchester United, to play for Wolves to go to Manchester United, to play for Leipzig to go for Man. It's a huge step up for them again in the struggles, and you've seen it with Rasmus Højlund. There's a big pressure and a big struggle there. But again, I look at it, what you got, and I'm just using Man City as an example when they started it. They brought an experienced sporting director in Cheeky Bernstein, who had been at Barcelona, been there. Manchester United at the moment, Jason Wilcox's pathway to being the sporting director at Manchester United, the biggest club, has not been, it's not been the
He had 9 months in charge of Southampton.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's inexperience in terms of running the football club.
Exactly.
So if you look at Sir Jim Ratcliffe,
surely the job of a sporting director at Manchester United, you need to have 10 years' experience at the top level to go in and do that job, don't you?
Yeah, of course. Maybe that, and that's what I'm trying to say is that maybe the experience at the top level of the ownership group of the Manchester United is not what it needs to be. They need more experienced people in the top of the football club. So Jim Ratcliffe, very successful businessman. He owns Nice. He owns a lot of businesses. But he owns one of the biggest clubs in the world. The pressure is totally different. The mistakes are 10 times more than what you are making at Nice because it's highlighted and it's, they're Manchester United. So
totally agree with you. So my point is that if that's the case and you've got an experience above people in the dugout, until you sort out that in the top positions, the executive positions, what's the point in keep changing the manager every 5 minutes? Because it's not going to make much of a difference, is it, ultimately?
Well, it will do at some point, but again, it's getting the footings of the football club right. And I still can't believe that Sir Alex doesn't. I don't know if he does, but he doesn't have an input in what the football club are doing, and taking an ambassadorial role. I think that shook a lot of people as well. And when you've got somebody like that, the greatest manager of our time around, still available to use, I'd be tapping on his door every single week saying, can you help? Can you use this? What do you think? And what we're doing? You have to use these people because the experience of the people of Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, it's not to what, at the moment, they've not gained enough experiences at other clubs to then giving you the opportunity to run the size of Manchester United.
Okay, well, we've done a lot on Manchester United. I do think it was a little bit unfair on Bruno that he had to wait so long to take the penalty, but it wasn't a great penalty anyway. That was a big turning point in the game. It does lead to a huge scout for Keith Andrews, who is proving a few people wrong already.
Martin O'Neill revving Martin up, isn't he?
Hey, hold on. Crookie relegated them before the season
Well,
started because he said, "I can't believe they've got the guy who was turned down by MK Dons."
Yeah, I said it was unnecessary risk, but I did change my stance on that quite early because
You flip flopped. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, you could see actually that Keith Andrews very quickly is getting his ideas across. And again, I don't want to make this a whole debate about Manchester United, but that's a manager who's come in, he's lost his best player, he's lost his captain, he's replacing a very successful manager, someone who was part of the fabric of the football club, and he's managed to put his own ideas across and get some very positive results. So it can be done. And they've not spent hundreds of millions of pounds. Thiago's been exceptional, actually. He was a player that you and I picked out when Mbuma and Wissa left the football club and said, look, they've got this guy. We've not really seen him because he's got a knee injury. If he stays fit, he might get some goals. And
he certainly has.
The way he took his first one, I mean, it could have gone into Rose Ed, but it's a brilliant finish.
What I do like about Brentford is that, and I don't think take this the wrong way, and Buemo and Visa were the best players, so there's an ego there. Of course there is. And ultimately, it's changed Thomas Frank, who's done extremely well, to bring a young manager in who's picked his sort of pathway and tried to, navigate his pathway into being a first-team manager. He was given the opportunity to set play coach, but he was more than that at Brentford. To then give him the job, these players would have gone, well, we've been linked with Manchester United. I'm not too sure this is the right manager for us to work with, the coach. They've done the business. They got rid of the two sort of high-profile players, and he's brought in, good players that have been able to buy into his system and get in there. He's managed to get his ideas over to the group and carry on a plan and change little bits from what Thomas Frank has done, and it's been successful so far. So far, been good. But again, the Premier League, it can hurt you quickly, and he won't want to rest on that, and he'll keep driving these players. So I think he's done a brilliant job so far, and these set play coaches, it gives us all a chance of maybe getting a job one day.
Interestingly, I spoke to him on Saturday, and one of the things he said, and I think this sort of hit home, and it sort of maybe crosses over into Crook's criticism of Ruben Amorim, is that a lot of people, he said, will look at us and go, oh, it's a position, we're in transition, we have to be patient, we're in a situation, we've changed the manager, we've lost players or whatever. He said, tough. We can't sit there and use that as an excuse not to put points on the board. This is the Premier League. This is the big boy league. The first thing you have to do is win points and matches. If you get points on the board, you can then develop as you go along. But your first job is, no matter how you do it, to start winning games. And that, I think, has been a criticism of a few managers over the course of the last few years, that they put philosophy and style over gaining points. Your first job is to get points. Then you can convince people of your methods afterwards. But it's a lot easier to do that if you're winning football matches. And I think he certainly deserved a little bit of credit for that. Talking about people who deserve credit or otherwise, Enzo Maresca was the subject of a staunch defence by a Chelsea briefing over the weekend. We know it's a Chelsea briefing because it comes out in a certain way, and no one asked them whether or not they were backing Enzo Maresca. They just decided to tell everyone. But the reason why that's all coming out is because Chelsea collapsed at home, lost again. The second time in a week that it's happened that they've gone down to 10 players and then been on the wrong end of a result. But also, this is a bad start to the season for Chelsea. They've won just 2 games, Fulham when they shouldn't have won, and West Ham when, let's be honest about it, it's West Ham. So it hasn't been a great start to the season for Enzo Maresca. So why did Chelsea feel the need to come out and defend him so publicly?
It's interesting because, as you say, unless one journalist or a group of journalists have gone to him and asked if Maresca's position is safe, it seems an odd thing to do so early in the season, to come out and say, we're backing our manager, there'll be a review at the end of the season. So I think in some ways, this briefing could have the adverse effect of whatever Chelsea were trying to achieve, in that it just highlights the fact, as you say, that Chelsea haven't started the season particularly well. They've got Benfica in the Champions League live on the talkSPORT network this midweek. Jose Mourinho going back to Stamford Bridge. If he was to sentence Maresca to another defeat, and you wouldn't put it past him, then I think a lot of Chelsea fans will be asking questions. And there are a lot of Chelsea fans, I think maybe you're one of them, who never really have been fully on board with Maresca, despite the fact they won the Conference League last season, despite the fact they're world champions, even though the Premier League champions of Barcelona weren't part of that tournament in America in the summer. And I think fundamentally, the team, to me, is the complete opposite of what we're saying about Arsenal. They don't have the leaders. they've got too many young players and not enough experience. And I don't think it's a coincidence they keep getting players sent off.
You can't just go world champions and pretend that it's not actually a thing when it is really a thing. I mean, it's all right because Man United weren't invited. You get a little bit upset about that. But actually, the reason they qualified for that was because they won the Champions League in 2021. When was the last time Manchester United did that? Right, let's ask Charlie's view on this, because Enzo Maresca obviously did have quite a high stock coming into the season, but it just shows you the brutal nature of the Premier League, doesn't it? The fact that scrutiny falls on your shoulders very quickly if things don't go perfectly. They haven't started very well, but would it be foolish to call his position into question at this stage?
Yeah, I do think so. But again, for Chelsea, there's a lot. There's so many players. There's a lot of young players, but what comes with young players at times is a lot of naivety in terms of getting sent off, and decision making is not to the level of an experienced player. But what you can't say about these owners is they've put the money in and they've spent money. But again, I think they've spent, a lot of young players that didn't need to be spent. And they've got a lot of players in the same position, and the results at the moment of not being what they expected or what they want. And again, when you come into management, the pressure is there, and it doesn't what you've done previously or what you've done last season. I think it's probably only Pep that can get away with that. What you can work on what you've done previously. As soon as that season finishes, you're done and dusted. And like you say, within 6 or 8 games, if you're not performing, you're not getting wins, your head's on the chopping board. It's simple as that.
And lots of people will point to the fact they've spent a lot of money and they've invested the £2 billion or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter if you haven't strengthened the squad. And you talked a little bit about Manchester United and saying that they put in a lot of money as well, but they spent it in the wrong areas. Arguably, Chelsea have done a very good job at recruiting players that over time are going to have their value inflated. They're going to be able to sell on and make money for. But that's not really the gig, is it? I mean, the gig is to try and build a team to win or to be competitive in the Premier League.
Is that the model? Is that Chelsea's model that they buy?
I think it is the model. It absolutely is the model. But I don't know if that's the right thing to be doing.
For me, it's Chelsea. That shouldn't be the model. Chelsea's model should be about winning trophies and winning titles, not bringing young players in to sell them in 2 years' time for more profit. I
don't think you need much tweak, do you, Charlie, to get them into that position, because they are buying good quality players. But what they need is a stronger spine of experience that helps guide those players to greater success.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, people like you go back to Thiago Silva that would come in when he was an experienced player, an older player. He organised the group. He was a big player within the dressing room. But at the moment, they don't have that experienced players within that team. They're all young. They're, like I say, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to get big decisions wrong. Every summer, every window, there's probably a list of 10, 12 Chelsea players that a lot of Premier League clubs or European clubs could take in the market. So that just shows how big the squad is. But for me, Chelsea, of course, you can buy young players, but the model and the project shouldn't be to buy young players to sell them again for big profit. Yeah, for Brighton, for Brentford, for other clubs within the Premier League, that's a great model. But for Chelsea, it's about winning titles and going and winning in the Champions League and sort of that. So again, I think you need a core of good, experienced players. Of course, it doesn't need to be 30 plus. They could be 28, 27, 28 that have played at big clubs and have won major titles. And again, having your Delaps and people like Cole Palmer now needing to get fit. Obviously he's had a tough few months in terms of injuries and problems, playing a lot of games. Does the summer pre-season World Club Championship affecting players now? Possibly, but they've known that for a long time. So again, you can use them and pull them out if you feel that you've got that. But the manager's hadn't to get results, so he's hadn't to keep playing the same players, and it's backfired. So for Chelsea, it's been a tough start. But again, I like Maresca. I think he's a very good coach, and there's a difference between coaching and management, as you could see with Graham Potter at the moment. And it's been a tough start for him, but I think he'll come through it.
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting is that Chelsea like to give Brighton a hell of a lot of money to try and copy what they're doing. 337 million quid over the last 2 years, I think it is, in terms of compensation, staff and whatever. I don't know. God, they just seem to pile money into Tony Bloom's back pocket. But one of the things that Brighton do really well that Chelsea haven't done is recruit experienced players. James Milner, Danny Welbeck, who was absolutely brilliant this weekend. I mean, he's fantastic, isn't he, Danny Welbeck? He's having a great Indian summer to his career.
Well, he's not actually started the season particularly well. And speaking of people who watch Brighton regularly, they were a bit concerned by his form, but certainly weren't concerned at the weekend. He took his goals well, probably should have had a penalty as well for the challenge by Malagusto. But one Brighton fan put it to me on Sunday morning. I said that win must feel extra satisfying. He said, well, I see it as Brighton against Brighton legends whenever we play Chelsea. And at the moment, it's Brighton's new kids who are coming out on top more often than not.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of managers, and again, you talk about Fabian Hutzler, he's a young coach, young manager himself. So a lot of young managers, to have experienced players within the dressing room sometimes could be a burden, because they look at their careers that they've had and they think, oh, that could put pressure on me. But if you're a young manager and you're confident in your work, you can use that to your advantage. And I think he's used it to his advantage. Your Welbecks, your Milners, Dunk, people that inside the football club that have done a brilliant job off the pitch for him in terms of when they've had a little bit of a tough period. Because I watched them, we watched them at Everton early in the season and played really well, lost the game, and then you still sat there watching after the game. And James Milner, at his age, is out on the pitch doing runs after the game, preparing himself for the next match. That's the standard, and that's a level of a top professional. And that rubs off on the other lads inside the dressing room. Yeah, of course, when it's going well, it's going well. But you don't. The senior players are more important when it's not going well, and they can keep the group together. You can keep a calmness in there, and I think that having senior players in and around your young group can really help you, and it can help you going forward and affect it. And that's where talk about Chelsea is something that they might have to look at as well.
Okay, very quickly, we're going to look at a couple of new men that have been moved around the Premier League managerial hot seat. Ange Postecoglou still to get a win at Nottingham Forest. Nuno Espirito Santo going to Everton with West Ham because he's replaced Graham Potter. Now, obviously, I mean, the Ange situation, they played quite well in midweek against Real Betis and had chances against Sunderland, but didn't work for Ange. Nuno Espirito Santo going into West Ham, what difference is that going to make? Crook, first of all, just how did it come about? And was it inevitable that there was always going to be a change at West Ham?
Yeah, I think so. I think David Sullivan was having doubts even at the back end of last season. Obviously, they've started this season really poorly. There were some disagreements in terms of recruitment, particularly in the goalkeeping position when Graham Potter got his man in Mads Hermansen and then obviously had to drop him from the team. So that was definitely a big negative as far as Sullivan was concerned. We broke the story a week or so ago. They'd spoken to Slaven Bilic about an emotional return. Then we found out that Karen Brady had also been speaking to Nuno Espirito Santo. So once that starts happening, I think it was always a matter of time. I expected David Moyes to get at least this Everton game and maybe Arsenal next weekend and then go during the October international
Graham
break.
Potter, not David Moyes. He was sacked previously.
Yeah, there is an irony that David Moyes is obviously now Everton manager, which is where West Ham goes tonight. But yeah, you're right. But once you start sounding out a replacement, the current manager is a dead man walking. It's history repeating, really, as far as West Ham are concerned, because the same happened with Julian Lopetegui. I think the timing is crass from West Ham to make Graham Potter do his pre-match press conference on Friday, sack him on Saturday morning ahead of a game on Monday. I think it's bordering on humiliation, to be honest, particularly as Potter had to answer some questions about those face swap memes that are going around on social media. But this is West Ham. This is a club who do lack a bit of class when it comes to their managers.
Is it really like that, Charlie? You are a manager. You've been in a situation where you've been taken out of the firing line. You know, I think when you walk into the profession that there is every chance you're going to get fired because everyone does. Do you sort of talk about it in circles, in managerial circles, the way that these conversations happen? Because you all know that these conversations happen because sometimes you're a part of them. You know, people do go behind your back and sound out a replacement. People do make you do things that don't necessarily look particularly great. But is that just part and parcel of being a manager nowadays?
Yeah, of course it is. I think that's what you're signing up for, isn't it? But there's a way of doing it, and I think there's a way of respect as a manager outside the game that, of course, and I'm learning from previous people that I've worked with is that there is a way of having a personal pride that, you know, clubs want to talk to you and you say no because there's a manager in the job. If you want to talk to me, then obviously the decision can be made once if you make that decision on your current manager, which is something that I would take into to any moment that it come from me. So it's important that you respect the manager that's in the job, because it is tough, you know, because sometimes you will be in that situation and it's been there. And like I say, you have to try and, you know, as managers, we're sort of in it together, where there's got to be a manager sort of respect that, you know, you're in the job, it's not the right thing to do, so you have to wait in that opportunity. But these conversations are going on long before, and like I say, picture of Nuno was in London. It could have been nothing, but it was made a big thing. But
could have been. It could have just been getting a coffee with Karen Brady. I mean, you know, that happens, doesn't it?
Wonder,
you never know.
I wonder who paid.
Yeah, great question.
But for me, I think if you look at Graham, it's for a young British coach, I think it's disappointing, because we look at Graham, we look at Eddie Howe, we look at David Moyes, that they're the flagship for us as young coaches trying to be still in the Premier League, and we need British coaches in the Premier League to do really well, because in the moment it seems to be a lot of foreign coaches coming into the Premier League, and we need somebody to give us that flag bearing moment.
And that is probably a debate for another day, because we could go on for ages talking about that. But we talked about this last night when we were on our way home from Newcastle. The fact that Eddie Howe, the fact that Sean Dyche for many years was in the Premier League, that David is in the Premier League. You know, I think we should appreciate that this is a global league. It's the best domestic football league in the entire world. And if you get into the position where you're coaching in this league, you are a head coach in this league, you are doing a fantastic job, and you are at the very top of your profession. What is really sad is that Nuno Espirito Santo will not be taking West Ham to Nottingham Forest anytime soon, because they've already played each other at the City Ground, which is a shame, because we would have really liked that. Charlie, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for your time this morning. It's been great to have you on. Hopefully we'll have you on again. Your former club Liverpool take on Galatasaray on Tuesday night live on talkSPORT. Chelsea Benfica is on talkSPORT 2 at the same time. Wednesday night we've got Newcastle away in Belgium at 5:45 on talkSPORT 2. Arsenal Olympiacos and Monaco against Manchester City on talkSPORT and talkSPORT 2 on Wednesday night. There's European football Thursday night. There's more football for you Friday night. Saturday we've got Leeds United against Tottenham. It's all the football all the time. You know it makes sense. It's got to be talkSPORT.